and welcome back to Asaph Music School. This course is entitled Sight Singing, and we're learning how to pick up a piece of music that we've never seen before and being able to sing it on sight. In our first lesson, we talked about the pulse, how to create a steady pulse, and then how to subdivide it, and then how to elongate it in order to derive different types of notes. We talked about the whole note, the half note, the quarter note, the eighth note, and the 16th note, and how those notes are all relative to one another. The steady pulse can be found in any song by simply singing along with it. For example, Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. And as you clap and sing through a song, you'll notice that some notes, some pitches, are held out for several of those beats. Or sometimes the pitches actually take up less space than one of those beats, one of those pulses. Today's lesson discusses those different types of notes, and in today's lesson we'll learn how to read, to identify quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes, and being able to perform them. This, again, the idea here is not a difficult one. It just takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of knowledge. Let's take a look at our introduction. The quarter note is most often used as a reference point when discussing rhythm, and is normally assigned the value of 1 beat. From there, we can move on to learning that the half note gets 2 beats, and the whole note gets 4 beats. Each note has an associated rest. So we're going to use the quarter note as the basis of learning rhythm. As we performed that steady pulse earlier, that steady pulse would be equal to a quarter note. And so what we're going to discuss in today's lesson is the half note, which elongates the quarter note into 2 pulses, and then the whole note, which elongates that pulse into 4 beats. All right, so the whole note gets 4 beats, the half note gets 2 beats, the quarter note gets 1 beat. Let's take a look on the right-hand side there of the top of the page where we have a little diagram that discusses some of the things that we'll have to be able to read when we look at a piece of music. So let's take a look there. On the left-hand side of that chart, you'll see the word time signature. Please locate that there on the chart, the time signature. The time signature consists of 2 numbers, one on top of the other. The time signature is important in telling us how many beats are in each measure and what type of note is going to receive the main pulse. So that's the time signature. The top number tells us the number of beats in each measure, in this case 4, and then the bottom number tells us which note receives 1 beat. What we have to do with the bottom number is simply put a 1 over it and make a fraction out of it, and that will tell us what type of note is going to receive 1 beat. In our example here, the bottom number is a 4. If we put a 1 over the 4, we have 1/4. The 1/4 note, or the quarter note, is going to receive 1 beat. The top number there tells us that there are going to be 4 of these in each measure. So we could read this time signature by saying this: there are 4 quarter notes in each measure. If the time signature said 3/4, that would mean that there would be 3 quarter notes per measure. If the time signature were a 4 over a 2, we would read that as there are 4 half notes in each measure. If the bottom number is 2, then we put a 1 over it, 1/2, equaling a half note. So if the time signature were 4/2, we would read that as 4 half notes per measure. Now, you may be wondering, what exactly is a measure? A measure is simply the notes that are contained between 2 bar lines. You'll notice that the next thing on our chart there is a bar line. A bar line is simply a vertical line that goes through a staff to subdivide the music into different sections. And so a measure would be one of those sections. Each section in our piece of music is called a measure, and it's identified by its boundaries, which are these bar lines. You'll notice there, the last thing on our chart, at the end of our chart, you'll see a double bar line. The double bar line indicates the end of a section or the end of the song. So that's a double bar line. All right, and so you'll notice there in the bottom I've identified the fact that this particular example has 2 measures in it. You'll notice that there is a bar line there in the middle, and there's a bar line at the end that breaks our entire piece of music into 2 parts. So there are 2 measures there. I hope you understand that concept. This is very important for us as we begin our lessons on learning to sight sing. You should be able to identify what a measure is and identify the fact that it is clearly laid out and identified and marked out by these bar lines in the staff. Okay, so that's the chart. This will help us as we get into our exercises, and as we can talk about them intelligently and be able to identify where we're at in the music. Let's go back there on the other side of that, to the left of that particular chart, and let's talk about these different types of notes. We have on the top of our list here the quarter note. You need to be able to identify a quarter note as being a quarter note. It has a filled-in head and it has a stem on it. The quarter note, we say, gets one beat. And we can read these. If we're using a syllable to read these, we could use the syllable ta. And we'll be doing this some here in just a moment. So the quarter note, filled in head with a stem, gets one beat, and we can say the word ta. The quarter rest looks like that squiggly line. Many times when I'm talking to children about the quarter rest, I say that it looks kind of like a mustache on its side. So you can think of that however you'd like, but that's the quarter rest. What we do in a quarter rest is we remain silent for one beat. So we have the quarter note and the quarter rest. And we can just simply say the word rest, or whisper the word rest when we see one of those to indicate that we're to stop singing at that point. Under the line there, we'll see the next note that we'll talk about, and that is the half note. The half note looks like a head that is not filled in, and it has a stem on it. So it has an empty head and a stem. The half note receives two beats, and we would say it like this, ta. If we say it like that, ta, we're carrying it over. We realize that the half note receives two of those pulses that we were talking about earlier. So the half note gets two beats, we would say ta. The half rest sits on top of the line. It looks like a rectangle on top of a line, the middle line on the staff. Many times we say that the half rest looks like a hat. So the word hat sounds similar to the word half, and that helps us to identify it. But anyway, at any rate, we have the half rest, and this would be two silent beats. We would let two pulses go by without performing anything. What we'll say when we're doing our exercises is simply rest, rest. We'll whisper that word twice on the pulse. So the half rest gets two silent beats. Under that line, we come to the whole note. The whole note is just simply an oval-shaped head. It is empty. There's nothing filled in. There is no stem. There are no flags on the whole note. The whole note receives four beats, or four pulses. So we can elongate that pulse, hold it out for four beats to get a whole note. What we would say is ta, giving a little bounce on each of those ahs to help us recognize the fact that the whole note gets four pulses or four beats. Under that, you'll notice the whole rest. The whole rest is a rectangle that sits underneath the line. It looks similar to the half rest, except the half rest is on top of the line. The whole rest can be remembered by simply thinking that it looks like a picture of a hole in the ground. And so sometimes we can do that to remember the whole rest looks like a hole. The whole rest gets four silent beats. We would rest for four beats. We would say rest, 2, 3, 4. Or you could say rest, 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 to indicate the fact that we would not be singing, we would not be performing anything on these rests. So that's the quarter note, the quarter rest, the half note and the half rest, the whole note and the whole rest. Make sure that you are able to identify them, be able to recognize the type of note that it is or the type of rest that it is, and also be able to perform the vocal syllable that we've given you there in our chart. On the bottom of the page, we have just simply a bunch of exercises. What we're going to do right now is we're going to start doing some actual sight singing. We're going to do some simple rhythms, and as we read these simple rhythms, this will give us an idea of how to perform them. These rhythms will help us to understand the relationship between the different types of notes, the quarter note, the half note, and the whole note. So we'll start off from easy parts and we'll go to more difficult parts. Look at exercise number one. Number one. You'll notice at the beginning of each of these exercises that there is a time signature. I have used the time signature of 4/4 since it's the easiest one. It's the most common time signature in our music. And so we'll start there. Number one, time signature of 4/4, and these are all quarter notes. This should be easy to perform. Let's start off by simply reading it using the syllables that we've given you above. All right, so we're going to say the word ta for each of those quarter notes. As you read through this particular exercise, make sure that you perform them steady. Don't rush one and don't make one any longer. Each of them need to be exactly the same length of time. So let's do it. Ready? Begin. Ta, 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 ta.